Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Judy Ting-Edwards, and I'm here to do two things. Firstly, to convince you of the need to professionalize the tech industry, and secondly, to think about some fundamental ethical rules to help you in your day-to-day job. So why this talk? In case you haven't realized or noticed, we live in an increasingly digital world where we spend more and more of our time online, like traveling to a new country, a foreign country. People need to make that leap of faith in order to integrate with the new society. And that leap of faith is trust. When eating at a new restaurant, gosh, this is a bit close to home. When eating at a new restaurant, you need to trust the cook not to poison you or not to charge you double just because you're new. People who are new to cyberspace don't know they're being duped because they don't know it's possible. I've had lawyers argue with me that PDFs are immutable and therefore are a good source of evidence. This sounds silly to you because you've been in cyberspace longer than those lawyers. This doesn't mean those lawyers are stupid. It just means they simply don't know. By the way, when I mean cyberspace, I mean not just online. I mean any virtual space involving computers. This is a short talk with big issues, so I won't have time to cover some of the issues on there. Before I start this talk, though, here's a little bit about me. I was a lawyer for 6 years. Until last year, I decided to stop standing next to the fax machine on a Friday afternoon and wait for my settlement, and I learned to code. I attended B-Sides here in Wellington while I was just learning HTML and CSS. I didn't understand much of the technical contents at B-Sides, but I loved all the focus on human psychology in InfoSec. And the people who work in security, especially the blue teamers, the defenders, they're just amazing. Despite all the terrible things that happen to the systems they protect, they still have the utmost faith in humanity. God knows why. I mean, they don't squirrel away tricks of the trade or other knowledge like many of the lawyers I've met. In fact, they'd encourage me to learn. Some of these inspirational people are sitting among us today. I'm still learning, and in fact, I've learned tons today. I've been at my first security job for 5 months now, and I'm loving all the cool new things that I get to learn every day. I recently started learning PowerShell. Thank you, Pikelet. And it's the inspiration for this talk. For those of you who don't know PowerShell, Cmdlets are little functions that you can plug in the PowerShell console, and they generally follow a verb-noun format. So here's a little bit of disclaimer. I'm just treating you guys as my PowerShell console, and I haven't actually scripted them. The first commandlet is get roles. There are many facets to this commandlet. This is why it's first. Roles could mean your role on the org chart, your title, your position, or roles could mean admin roles or user roles in Active Directory. Or roles could just simply mean your role in the community, your profession. It's the third one, the last one that I want to focus on today. Old professions like lawyering and doctoring have a code of ethics. Usually that just means that you have a duty to your profession above and beyond your duty to your boss, your friends, or your client. I'm not saying that you should bite the hand that feeds you, but you shouldn't make the rest of us in your profession look bad. Simply put, you have different duties depending on the roles that you have or the hats you wear. In ethics, this is called role-differentiated morality. But sometimes there's a conflict between the duties you owe as part of your roles. This is called having a conflict of interest. Here's a keylogger that logs all the keystrokes on the internet browser. What would you do if your boss asked you to write a code like this? Would you do it? Your duty to the employer says you should write that keylogger so they can get credit card credentials and steal money from the user. Your duty to your profession, however, says that you should not write the keylogger so the users can continue to trust coders coding websites they use. You now have a conflict of interest, and the right thing to do is to stand up to your boss. A code of ethics makes it easier for people to stand up to their bosses and maintain the bottom line ethical standards for the profession. I once had to work for a dodgy lawyer, and trust me, the role differentiator morality is what helped me sleep at night. I find that almost all conflicts are sourced from some differences in expectations. If we could communicate effectively what we mean so that everyone's on the same page, then we'd create more trust, both within our teams and with the users. Here's a formula I've devised. Uncertainty breeds conflict, breeds blame, breeds distrust. By the way, all odd-numbered commandlets are positive statements, whereas even-numbered commandlets are negative statements. If you review these slides, you'll find that they are in sets of 2. Next commandlet is get empathy. There's a really cool function in PowerShell called what if, which allows you to see the end result without actually carrying out that function. This is basically the point of the third commandlet. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine what it's like to live their lives. Now, empathy is not the same as sympathy. Empathy means sharing the same feelings, whereas sympathy means feeling sorry for someone. You become patronizing if you're sympathetic to your users, and nobody likes to be patronized or talked down to. I get patronized all the time because I look so young and therefore inexperienced. I met a lawyer who was trying to explain to me what a mortgage was the other day. By the end of our chat, it was me who ended up explaining to her the difference between a loan, a mortgage, and a caveat. Okay, I'm not here to explain what that is to you now, but the point is she failed to understand who I am before making assumptions about me. Empathy is about understanding the other person's situation and caring enough to better their situation. Next commandlet is stop contempt. Everyone's life is different. Just because you know what port number 443 is doesn't mean you know how to raise a PG, do a title search, or know what UNHCR is. Basically, don't generalize someone's stupidity simply because they don't know a fact that you know. Oren's talk on contempt culture last year at B-Sides really rang true for me. In fact, I actually sat outside B-Sides after her talk and cried about how stupid and dumb I must look to people in IT. Many researchers believe this contempt culture is why women get turned off working in IT. I also recommend reading Emily Chang's book, Brotopia, if you're interested in a feminist perspective of how we got into this cultural mess we're in. The fifth commandlet is get honesty. This is my personal favorite because it's about living your true self. Be honest. I want you to be honest not just with others, but with yourself. Be honest about your feelings too. When you're communicating with others, tell them how you feel. I feel angry because of what you said. Or, I feel frustrated that there's no certainty in our processes. I actually said that to my boss the other day. You'll find that if you describe your feelings out loud, you suddenly won't feel so bad anymore. You'll feel like it's just a feeling and it'll pass. You lose credibility if you're not honest. Users won't trust you if you're snooping around in the background with cookies, collecting their information. That's why these cookie pop-ups are effective in creating trust with users. Remember, honesty is the best policy. Next commandlet, number 6, stop recklessness. The definition of recklessness is dangerously careless. In some crimes, you'd be found guilty if you're so reckless as to the consequences of your actions. You wouldn't drive recklessly. Why would you code recklessly? You know your code has the potential to impact on people's lives. If you write that keylogger that got you credentials for someone and they lost their entire life savings, can you really live with yourself? Do you feel like you've done a good, honest day's work? Probably not. In legal practice, recklessness becomes negligence, and you can be struck off the bar for it. Simply put, it's unprofessional to be reckless. Here's an example of unprofessional coding that I've encountered while on holiday in Hawaii. You lose trust with your boss and your users if you do this too often. This particular example is relatively harmless, but when users see sloppy code like this, they'll wonder if you have sloppy security too. Maybe that's why nobody's signing up for that Monarchs tour. Next commandlet is open mind. This is more like get imagination. We all have different backgrounds. Even if you have similar upbringings, you'll end up with different views. This is why there's a trend in focusing on diversity in the workplace. We're creating and servicing products with a diverse user base, and our work should reflect that too. Remember the 2013 Tesla autopilot car that killed its passengers because it couldn't differentiate between a white truck and the sunny white background? Imagine what the dev was thinking. Oh, we only need to write code that differentiate between a car and the sky based on color, because I'm a geeky dev who's never driven a car in my life, and I don't, the sky is either blue or black. And we'll create tests, which only test conditions where the sky is blue or black. Have fundamental rules and principles, though. You can respect other people's views and still keep your personality. I'm open-minded enough to try different foods from different culture, but at the end of the day, I still prefer stinky tofu to blue cheese. Next commandlet is stop prejudice. It's a flip side to open mind. To me, there are two aspects to prejudice. You have a bias towards or against something, and then acting to the disadvantage of someone. You might have a bias against working with redheads, for example, but it's not prejudice unless you've disadvantaged them in some way, such as no redheads gets a Christmas hamper this year. People are generally more capable than you think. If you assume someone is too dumb to understand something, it's more likely that you have a prejudiced view of their intelligence. You know the old saying, don't assume. It makes an ass out of you and me. Second to last commandlet is get context. There's no such thing as a stupid question, but there are questions without context. The answer to these questions is always, it depends. People ask lawyers questions without context all the time. I've had a client ask me if she could have her boyfriend's iPhone, iPad, laptop, car if they ever broke up. My answer was, it depends. Is it a work phone? Does he actually own the car? Or how long have they been dating? Now, sometimes you can't ask those follow-up questions, so you have to get informed and update yourself. It's like patching, right? Patch your thought system. Know the social norms and cues. Know where they're coming from. The last commandlet is stop obsession. We're lucky to be in an industry where the consequences of our mistakes is not life and death. It's not like doctoring, right? You can argue that, yeah, the code we write, the configurations we make can be dangerous and can cause death, like the Tesla car example. But almost always, there are checks and balances in place to prevent that. Just like the other day, I found out that one of our ports is open to the public. I know, facepalm. But I also know that we've just had a firewall upgrade, and we're making damn sure the firewall is configured correctly. Sometimes it's more important for the business to have a working system than a secure but totally unusable system. Don't miss the woods for the trees and see the bigger picture. Users are going to use, so no point in obsessing over the possibility of the shit hitting the fan. I just said that, just see if they'll bleep that out. So here it is, my list of 10 commandlets to creating trust in cyberspace. Hopefully they'll provide you with some ethical principles to help you with your work in and out of the office. Perhaps we can start a movement. Let's prove to users that we are trustworthy, and let's become more professional through role-differentiated morality. In Maori, there's a concept called kaitiakitanga, and that means guardianship. Some Maori people believe that they're guardians of the land. I think as tech workers, we should adopt that concept in cyberspace. We all have the power to change what we do. So remember, New Zealand, with great power comes great responsibility. Thank you, and ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa.